This program is provided by Universal Genesis.
You know, what if a nation's soul wasn't in its monuments or its art, but in the questions it asks its teenagers? Today, we're diving into France's legendary high school exit exam, the Baccalauréat, and we're going to see how, for more than 100 years, it's been an incredibly accurate mirror of the times.
I mean, think about it. What if a test could do more than just grade students? What if it could actually tap into the collective consciousness, capturing all the hopes, the fears, and the deepest questions of an entire generation? Well, in France, it seems like one very special test does exactly that.
For basically every 18-year-old in France, the Baccalauréat philosophy exam is this huge national rite of passage. Picture it. You sit down for 4 hours with just a single essay question. It's the moment you officially go from being a kid to an intellectual adult. This is so much more than a test. It's a piece of the French identity. But here's where it starts to get really weird. If you look back, year after year, decade after decade, the questions on this test have this uncanny habit of perfectly reflecting the biggest philosophical debates happening in the world at that exact moment. I mean, perfect echoes. So how is that even possible? Okay, so your first thought is probably the simple one, right? The people making the test just read the latest philosophy books and stick a question on the exam. But that's not really it. So what about the other way around? Maybe the test tells philosophers what to think about? No, definitely not. The real answer is, as usual, way more fascinating.
The secret to this whole mystery isn't a simple cause and effect. It's something much deeper, a really powerful idea called contemporaneous resonance.
So here's the big idea. It's not that one is influencing the other. It's that they are both resonating with the same thing. Think of it like this. The philosophers are trying to put words to the big tension points in society. You know, the stuff that's making everyone anxious or excited. And at the exact same time, the government is trying to figure out what essential questions the next generation absolutely has to think about. They're both tuning into the same invisible frequency, the spirit of the age.
And the evidence for this is just stunning. Let's actually take a walk through the last century or so and look at 10 examples. You're going to see just how perfectly in sync the exam and the era's great thinkers really were.
Our story starts in the 1880s. The test asks, can reason be free from belief? This question is a perfect snapshot of the time. Society was in the middle of this massive shift, moving away from religion and putting all its faith in the power of science, a movement called positivism. And boom, the biggest conflict of the age is handed right to an 18-year-old to figure out.
Now let's jump forward just one decade, to the 1890s. The question changes just slightly, but it's a huge deal. Does science speak the truth? All of a sudden, you see a little crack in that scientific certainty. People are starting to question if science has all the answers, and that new anxiety shows up immediately in the exam hall.
By the 1900s, the big question is about the mind itself. Can consciousness be measured? This was a major battle of ideas back then. On one side, you had this brand new field of psychology trying to measure and quantify everything about the mind. But on the other, you had philosophers like Henri Bergson arguing that our inner experience of time, what he called duration, could never, ever be captured with a clock.
Okay, now we're in the 1910s, right on the edge of the First World War, and you can feel the anxiety in the question, must an act be conscious? Sigmund Freud's wild new ideas about the unconscious mind were starting to spread, suggesting that we aren't really in control of ourselves. That's a pretty terrifying thought for a world that's about to spiral into chaos.
Let's jump ahead to the end of World War II. The question is now raw and deeply personal. Should one be responsible for one's actions? Imagine being in France in 1945, dealing with the legacy of occupation and resistance. Jean-Paul Sartre and the existentialists were forcing everyone to face the massive weight of individual choice. And the exam went right there into that incredibly painful conversation.
In the 1950s, the camera kind of pulls back a little. The question becomes, who is the other to me? The philosophers, who were still mostly the existentialists, started to shift their focus from the lonely, isolated individual to our messy, unavoidable relationships with everyone else. They argued that we only figure out who we are by seeing ourselves through the eyes of others. Then the 1960s arrive, and they bring a whole revolution in thinking. The exam asks, does structure precede the subject? Now, we know that sounds super academic, but it's basically asking, are you really in charge of your life? Or are you just a product of these huge, invisible systems, language, economy, social rules, that actually control you?
This was the core idea of structuralism, and it completely challenged the ideal of individual freedom.
Fast forward to the 1980s, and the conversation is all about power. Where does power exist? And if you're thinking of the philosopher Michel Foucault, you've hit the nail on the head. He was famous for arguing that power isn't just something a king or a government has, it's everywhere. It's in every relationship, in schools, in families, everywhere, constantly shaping us. And of course, that revolutionary idea goes straight to the high school students.
We enter the new millennium, the 2000s, and technology is forcing some really tough conversations. Can science and ethics be separated? Think about it. With huge advances in genetics and medicine, this wasn't just a thought experiment anymore. It was a real, urgent problem. Philosophy had to come out of the ivory tower and get into the science lab, and that's exactly what the exam reflected.
And that brings us right up to today, the 2020s. And the question might be the biggest one yet. Can the definition of human change? With AI getting more and more powerful, this ancient philosophical question is back with a vengeance. Seriously, what does it even mean to be human when we're creating intelligent machines?
So, after looking at this incredible pattern across an entire century, we have to ask again, what is this test really for? Because it's clearly not just a pop quiz on the history of philosophy. The pattern is way too consistent, way too powerful for that.
The baccalaureate's real job, its true purpose, is to take the most important, the most unavoidable, and the most unresolved questions of the time and officially pass them on to the next generation. It's like a cultural handoff, a way of making sure the nation's youth start wrestling with the problems they're about to inherit.
And this is what makes the whole system so brilliant. It's not a static list of facts you have to memorize. It's what the source for this explainer calls a mature system of knowledge that refuses completion. I love that. It means it's alive, it's always changing, always dealing with the now, and it's never finished.
Which leaves all of us with one final, pretty important thought. If this test forces every new generation to confront its biggest challenges, what would be on our exam today? What are the truly unavoidable questions that define this very moment in time?
This program is provided by Universal Genesis.